But what is going on, guys? How's your day going? I'm not on stream. I shouldn't be asking questions. No one can fucking answer. It's all good. I'm just going to let it flow. Anyway, cutting to the chase. This episode is going to be about... this episode as if it's like a known thing that's going on. So I'm starting a new series, I guess, to get me doing this and committing to it, because I feel would feel way worse to fail continuing something which I'd already started than if I just made a standalone video about whatever I wanted to do. So I'm going to do like a little series thing called Callouts, which I thought was a cool name for a Battlefield series, which is basically just you watching some probably TDM or like some pub gameplay where it makes me look better than I actually am, and me just talking in the background over the top, essentially just talking about whatever's relevant in the general, not even relevant, but whatever I fucking feel about. All right, there's no rules here. All right, I'm just talking, and you, if you'd like to, can sit around, scratch your balls, like take your bra off, have a good time, chill out, relax, listen to me rambling about some shit. And for this episode of Rambling Shit, it's going to be hardware stuff in Battlefield 5 and how that affects the gameplay that you play with, play against, probably more importantly, and how much does that affect the ways in which we all fucking play the game. And I mean, if you want to click off right now, very short answer is it affects it fucking a lot, incredibly highly, to the point where you could be playing with, I could have made this about what do you think affects the game more, settings or hardware? And you would probably say settings, because you know how bad the settings are when you first started the game, and I don't know why DICE do that. I know you might say, oh Jim, you're a competitive player, obviously you're going to have special settings for your special needs and all this bollocks. But I mean, why would you want screen shake? If I wanted things to shake, I would literally go to the Congo and start getting mortar striked in the search for blood diamonds and the rescue of some child labor. I do not want screen shake happening on screen when I'm in a war. I bet people were on fucking Omaha Beach in June 6th, 1944, fucking oh DICE, please turn off the screen shake when the fucking Germans are shitting the beach up. Jesus Christ. But the point is that I would actually argue that hardware is the main thing which affects gameplay in Battlefield 5, not just from a competitive standpoint, but also from just a public standpoint. The ways in which you can have different things that affect the game. I find in terms of console gaming, it's way more varied than it is on PC gaming, for example, because most PC people have a certain range of things which are consistent, which is almost all of them use a keyboard. Almost all of them, therefore everyone pretty much has a mouse. Therefore everyone pretty much has a decent enough monitor. Everyone has it doesn't matter how fast your PC is, really. It's more about internet speeds then and your own input. And there's some sort of consistent variables that go on there. On the contrary, you've got console gaming where you've got one console and everything else is completely different. Pretty much. Let's just start with the actual console itself when you're gaming, right? The fact that... So I recently upgraded, 6 months ago, upgraded from a normal PS4, which I had since fucking it came out, which was my godsend as a kid. I was look at this fucking thing. Cheeky voice break there. Still going through puberty at 20, I guess. Anyway, the point is, I noticed a massive difference with a lot of things that weren't what I was expecting. I was expecting the menu on the PS4, which is hilariously slow on an old PS4 if you've got one. Shout out to Ash. It's annoyingly slow, especially with certain games. Really slows down the performance of your general PS4 stuff. I wasn't expecting it to translate into gameplay, but I swear to God, there was some times where it's things like frame rate drops, which would happen on my old PS4, and then it definitely wasn't DICE sorting the issue out. It felt like the fact that my PS4 was newer, clearly had a better specs going on. I can't be asked to dive into the details. Clearly seems to have a better capability of dealing with the high intensity explosion graphical demanding moments in Battlefield 5, which happen obviously mainly on public servers. You don't really see that on 8v8 Squad Conquest, but on the bigger game modes sometimes it gets pretty crazy and the frame rate usually drops. I don't really get that as much as I did on my old PS4. And I think that's like first off the bat, if you've got a different situation in terms of frame rate, just because you've got a different console which runs the exact same thing, that's pretty crazy straight off the bat. We're not talking about controllers yet, we're not talking about monitors, we're not talking about headphones, we're not talking about internet, we're not talking about anything like that. We're talking about the actual console itself, and straight away you've got a difference in situational stuff where you could get a kill in one situation where someone else couldn't in another situation. situation, and that's just that to me is pretty like, okay, well, we've started off on the wrong foot in terms of, I guess I probably should have made this specifically clear before, but I'm interested in fair, even, balanced play. And you might say, Jim, you use a Scuf, you're a fucking hypocrite, and I'll try and address that later. Guess what I would prefer is completely either unachievable or, actually no, I think it's desirable. I was going to say all desirable. I think it's definitely desirable. I think any competitive situation would be desirable, but I mean, like, even in terms of like public stuff, it's, people talk about things like, you know, loot drops, in-game changing stuff, even though that's sort of died out now, honestly. Like, we're not in 2015 anymore. Advanced Warfare's moved on. Like, that doesn't really happen anymore in games, honestly. But the things like paying to win in terms of all the other stuff that you can do, like some people just can't, I say some people, a lot of people with a lot of sense can not really be asked or can afford to upgrade from a PS4 to a PS4 Pro when the benefits are really muddy and only situational. That isn't to try and neutralize my point before, but it's something to be said that the amount of money some people spend on stuff does eventually translate into a significant accumulative advantage in certain situations on Battlefield, which is really hard in the moment when you can't blame every situation on, oh well, okay, I'm going to reel off the reasons why this guy killed me in the situation. But it sometimes, you might sound delusional, but you can be right in a lot of ways where some things like layer on top of each other that allow you to do certain things. So my point in saying that is to say, okay, let's talk about then if we accept the argument that there's, you know, better specs in a newer PS4, whether that be the Pro or just a fresher PS4 or whatever, I don't give a shit. That translates into other hardware, aka your monitor. So the PS4 Pro, as a more powerful console, is essentially going to run at a higher spec. If you've got a monitor which can handle that and can align itself with a higher refresh rate, for example, that you'd have on a PS4, if you've got a higher refresh rate hertz monitor, like I think mine is like a MnK Zowie. It was like the low grade. I say low grade. I still think it's fucking great. It was like one of the lower grade ones. You can get ones which are crazy refresh rate and like fucking expensive. I think mine was like 140 quid, which is still pretty fucking expensive. But bear in mind, I save up for these things. Like that was, I think, 144 hertz. I think. Having said that, I think a lot of games on console are capped at 60 hertz. But my point is, in certain situations, I think it kind of feeds into one another, essentially, where if you've got a PS4 Pro and a good monitor, that might turn into a noticeable difference in like day-to-day gameplay compared to just like the situational odd stuff with, you know, high intensity game mode stuff I was talking about earlier. Then it starts to become a bit more noticeable, like, oh, okay, well, my normal PS4 with my fucking, you know, dad fucking living room TV, which is like way too big, and, you know, as if we were watching fucking 2002 fucking FIFA World Cup or some shit on the big screen, folks. That's all we need. Just a big screen. Has got terrible fucking performance, but that's all we need. Just a massive fucking TV that's going to get stolen by the fucking local criminals. Anyway, that's not desirable anymore. Now you want a smaller, high refresh rate monitor for gaming, especially. Obviously, if it's a pixel and the pixel changes, aka a player coming around the corner, you'll see that before someone else does, and that's like a significant fucking advantage. I remember getting my monitor. I was playing Infinite Warfare at that point, Call of Duty, and wow, the difference on that game from what I was on before, which was my fucking, like, I've still got it, like my big TV in my room, fucking JVC, like trash ass TV to the monitor, was like, wow. I thought I was pants. Turns out, Jesus Christ, that was like when I first fucking had the nucleus of an idea that, wow, this is just fucking unfair, because it's just like the way you can pay to win in real life. Fuck the actual game. I mean, Infinite Warfare was a bad game for that, because you could add variants and shit, and that was in loot boxes and all that kind of stuff. But the in-game pay to win shit with just that one piece of hardware, to me, blew my fucking mind at the time. And I think that has something to be said about it, how they start to feed into one another. Now, let's get to the part where you're probably interested in, is the controller situation, which is fucking the hand input, let's just say, because I guess I'm way too prone to being, maybe I'm way too aware, like I wish I was blissfully ignorant about this kind of stuff and didn't think that everyone cheated who's on a good team to some degree, or at least has some sort of like knowledge that other people do that on their team, and they kind of try and turn a blind eye to it. All this kind of shit that goes on is, what controller do you have? And I'll try and explain why I use a Scuf. The original reason I bought it, again, touching on Infinite Warfare, was for Jetpack Call of Duty, basically. I thought that was like a thing going forward, and then instantly they turned to fucking World War II. So I was like, oh, fuck that. bit of a waste of money. It turns out it was actually useful for Battlefield 1 when, if anyone remembers, when the sliding meta was a thing where fucking drop shotting wasn't a thing. Thank fuck for that. More French dudes drop shotting. Don't want to see that ever again in my life. When sliding into fucking A flag, Bore and Blitz was a thing with a slide on Battlefield 1. That was when it was actually useful in Battlefield. Since then, it's not been that useful, honestly. Obviously, if you're completely unaware, the difference between a DS4, which is the normal controllers, and the Scuf is the paddles on the back. I have an Impact, so that's got 4 on the back instead of the 4S. Is it 4PS, something like that? I think it's called 4PS, which has got 2. I only use 2, so the only reason I got the Impact was for the shape of it. It sort of lends itself to bigger hands. I now kind of like rely on it now in the sense that I've been playing on it for so long that it would, if I go back to a normal one, the hand shape changes massively, which is an underrated aspect of what controller you pick, because obviously everything else, your finger position, all that kind of stuff lends itself, it is reliant on that essentially. But also just the fact I'm so used to it now where I put my fingers for like the back paddles, like I just have X and circle on the back, that it would change massively if I did a different controller, but the actual stuff I do on the map wouldn't change that much. I would still do the exact same shit on a controller because you've still got the physical limitations of the stick basically, and I don't know how much detail to put in here because I'm assuming people that listen to this know what they're doing on Battlefield or in general gaming terms. I assume they know what they're doing to the extent where I don't have to point out why a stick is, for example, not nearly as effective as a source of movement in one digit than it is for a whole hand on a mouse, for example, or a whole wrist or a forearm, which is what most people recommend to do with the mouse, to flick and all that kind of stuff. The physical limitations of that are pretty consistent across controllers. Like if you've got a Rajin, am I saying that? I'm probably saying that completely wrong. Scuf, a normal DS4. There's like the Scuf Vantage now, which has got like an Xbox layout instead. Like the stick remains consistent, even though the number of buttons basically, all the paddles is a stick which has got a little pointer on the back, which points into another button on the back, which then has a assigned button to it. Essentially, it's just another button. Basically, it's just an elaborate button on the back that allows you to keep your thumb on the stick and not take it off. This isn't supposed to be an advert for Scuf, by the way. I know it's turning into one. I would recommend them for sure. For me, having used them for ages now. I think, well, I say ages. I think like since I joined Tribe in like November 2017, I think. I know I would have had it before that. So like mid 2017, something like that. They've been very useful. But the difference is limited pretty much by the game, aka, like I said, that it depends on if you need the slide. It depends on if you need a boost button on the back. And in Battlefield 5, you don't need to do that. Again, like the difference between keeping a thumb on the stick and off the stick can save your life or get you killed in certain situations. But it's very like situational and not really consistent with a higher level of skill ceiling in already good players, which leads me nicely on to the whole point with, okay, obviously I'm accepting the point that even during just having a Scuf itself makes me better than a lot of pub guys who don't have one. So I get that straight off the bat, just in terms of what you can do with jumping and dip shotting. If you can spam circle on the back paddle while you're shooting, for example, and moving your aim whilst you can do that without taking your thumb off the stick for a normal controller. So that's an accepted point. But the skill ceiling difference between that and a mouse, wow. So I barely play any PC games. Like I've played a few. I even downloaded the CS:GO fucking like the free version or whatever. I got shit on by like bots, so I'm terrible on PC. But the stuff I could do though, once I started getting going with it, like the turn-ons and the fucking like precision aim and shit, and I'm a moron with a mouse. Like I basically just play fucking Minecraft with that shit, and I could like, okay, I'm beaming kids on Minecraft, like holy shit. That's with me with like a mouse, which it looks cool. I don't know if I'm probably not gonna get a photo up. So unfortunately for you guys, you can't see my cool glowing mouse. It looks cool, but actually it's just a normal fucking mouse. It's not a gaming one. It's not like, it's just like a sexy mouse. That's just with that, not with a gaming mouse, which is has better traction, accuracy and stuff underneath, and someone who actually knows how to use it. Just the skill level difference in terms of the ceiling of what you can do with a shooter. I mean, you can believe me, or you can just watch any. If you've got any sort of esports like variety in your head that your eyes have ever encountered. Have you ever watched CS:GO? Have you ever watched Overwatch? Have you ever watched Rainbow Six with a mouse? Have you ever watched any other esport with a controller and a mouse difference? Then that's all I need to say. all I need to say. Have you ever played Rainbow Six Ranked? Have you ever played Apex? Have you ever watched an Apex controller player versus an Apex PC? Like, I really hope this is common knowledge where the skill ceiling, and one of the reasons why PC people are pretty much elitist people is, well, one of the reasons is because they're correct, basically, in the sense that the hardware skill ceiling is optimal using a mouse rather than a controller. It just makes sense. It's just one digit versus a whole arm of movement, flat surface, all that kind of stuff. There's so many reasons why that's a better thing to do, which leads me nicely onto MnK players. You love to see it, folks. We had to just get on this topic. So in the Battlefield community, if you weren't aware, there is a very sort of shady, uneasy, jokey, sort of silent truce that goes on where everyone knows there's some MnK players, but no one knows quite where the MnK players are. Or, well, you can kind of guess like the top 4 teams, top 5 teams. There's going to be a few little around, but there's not really like a team, well, one up, where just like everyone or like the majority of players, like the vast majority of players are using mouse and keyboard. The way to get around that nowadays is, which leads me nicely onto another point, and actually gets me very quickly off this topic of MnK, because I regretted it as soon as I started talking about it, because I guarantee someone's already smashed that dislike button just because I mentioned the fucking team. Guarantee you, folks. Is the way to get around that is because MnK is such like a joke. It's like Gibraltar and Apex. Like, no one fucking takes it seriously. As soon as you say MnK, everyone's like, oh, for fuck's sake, like, good luck proving that. Good luck, blah blah blah. Even though the eye test is usually a good way of doing it. A lot of people actually don't know the game they play, which amazes me. Sometimes people say, oh, that guy's... No, you just got beamed. You just got beamed. Sometimes when you play, obviously, you've just got to say, dude, I'm sorry, I missed my shots. I got fucking fried. Or that guy one-framed me. Or, you know, it's just the one-frame bug. Or it's just the Lewis gun. Or whatever. Thompson rapid fire. Like, not every death has to be a hardware excuse. Don't get me wrong. But it's don't get me wrong. It's you can tell at certain times. So very specifically, it's not about like who kills you the most, who's the best player, he must be MnK. It's more like in what situations do you get killed. Like when you see someone's player literally like 180 and their physical character, the animation doesn't even catch up with itself for a bit, and he sort of gets stuck like halfway through because he turns that quickly and the gun's kind of like lags behind him. That is when you're like, wow, he's either got... There's obviously a correlation then between sensitivity and mouse usage. So again, I could start fucking searching streams of where I didn't remember to clip a fucking suspected MnK dude, but then I'll probably get fucking DDoSed by some one-up dude for the next 3 weeks. So I don't really want to do that. Just believe me when I say sometimes you're just like, and the same names crop up, the same teams crop up. Everyone kind of has some sort of like knowledge of what's going on. But the best way of getting around that is not actually using a mouse, it's using a Cronus instead. The script usage is pretty well known. If you're not aware, the general gist is you plug your Cronus into your PC, you download the script, aka the anti-recoil or the faster rate of fire, or it's mainly anti-recoil in Battlefield 5 because that's the sort of the main issue with using certain guns like the STG is the recoil. If they didn't have the recoil, it'd be a laser beam and you could retain the Panzerfaust dynamite shit that you've got. All that kind of jazz. It used to be really good for rapid fire and on the auto-loading 8.25 in Battlefield 1. But the general gist is now you plug it into your PC, you download the script, you plug it into your PS4, you select the right number on top of it. If you're wondering why I suspiciously know too much about this, is because one day I just decided, actually, I'm bored of not knowing what I'm talking about here when I say he's pointing out a Cronus. When you watch people with an SDG and they just don't move their fucking thing because it's just not moving, and I'm just like, well, and one time I was like, okay, it must be me. There's no way this dude that I was watching, who's like pretty well known, respected, nice guy in the Battlefield community, there's no way this guy cheats. So I went on the SDG, I compared it like on my phone right next to the screen, and then doing it on the screen myself. I did all the variations possible of the specializations as well to try and make sure it wasn't me. And then recently when King told me about the muzzle stuff, I even changed every single shaped muzzle on the SDG to see if it was that. It wasn't. I wasted about 2.5 something like that hours doing that shit. It was a massive pain in the ass. Basically proved to myself that actually no, it's not me. I haven't got a Cronus mod, and it was kind of just like disappointing, honestly. It used to really piss me off, and now it's just like, oh, for fuck's sake, like really, like that's a different discussion. I don't want to go into that, but essentially that's how it works. And obviously you plug that into your PS4, you plug your controller into the Cronus that goes into the PS4, and then blah blah blah, you've got your script on your thing, and it mitigates the recoil essentially of the gun you've got, which is why SDG usage is like a pretty quick giveaway of a Cronus. So anyway, that's the sort of way around it. So hopefully I don't have to make this like essay like train of thought, which I tend to do, which is repeat the obvious. Hope you've kind of got the gist now. The amount of different things you can do in terms of purchasable hardware that you can do to change the game is pretty nuts. And I haven't talked about two more things, which I'm going to talk about now, which is headphones and internet or / LAN cables, I guess. So obviously headphones are like there's loads of different shit you can get. To be fair, this is kind of like a more boring point to me, because I feel like a lot of gaming dudes have got about like most people go for like the mid-range stuff. Like most people go for like the 50 quid to 100 quid headphones, where like it's better than the shit you can get like for, you know, an Indian guy in an Uber fucking driving his clients around, like, you know, talking to his best mate from fucking Kashmir on his little Bluetooth headset. Most people don't go for those. Most people go for like, you know, the mid-range. It sounds pretty good, and you don't need it to, you know, it's not studio quality, but you don't need it to be. You're going to be hearing loud gunshots most of the time. Oh, I just dropped my fucking, don't ask. So the headphone stuff is kind of a moot point, but it's just another case of like, you see people basically having to use by rule, aka they want to make it as fair as possible, the same headphone. And that's me saying like headphones aren't really that big of a deal. They still insist fucking like, I think the winner's gonna win like 800,000 fucking quid. Like the prize pool is crazy. If you want Battlefield to get to that stage, which I do, then you've got to start sort of taking the gist of like how I could do a separate video on that, on how, what is wrong with the okay. So if you want to see that fucking video, give this one a like. I'll make sure I do that. I'll basically go through everything and everyone that is wrong in the Battlefield community right now, and see if we can get to the competitive one specifically, and see if we can get to a point where all that kind of shit gets out of the way. But all you have to do is look at other competitive situations and say, what are they doing? That's fair. Even the headsets are the same, let alone the controllers, which in COD pretty much everyone uses a Scuf, but as long as you've got a controller, you're allowed. Fuck what the blah blah blah. I actually don't give a shit what controller you use. You can use whatever you want, as long as it's not a mouse and as long as it's not a fucking mod device. I don't give a fuck. Like they you know, it's consistent across the board, and it's that way for to achieve competitive integrity. And if that's what you want, then that's what you've got to do. I'm going to swiftly move on from that, because I think you guys are intelligent enough to get that point, that someone with a worse headset can get killed when someone with a better headset can hear you, aka who got a new headset recently in Tribe? Was it Ash again? I think that's the second time I mentioned Ash in this. Got the Steel series, yeah, and for the first few days he was like, oh my fucking god, I can hear like dudes from like years away. So things like that I think is more useful in Apex, where you've got a bit more depth of hearing rather than like a 3-lane small map or something. But you get my point. That can affect gameplay as well. Without even hopping on yet, if you had all these advantages, then fucking hell, you're going to be a beast. Lastly, internet LAN cables. I did a speed test on my PC and it was way better than I thought it was. And then I realized that I was doing it to the server, which is literally like down the road in fucking Birmingham. So turns out my apparently 20 megabits of second of upload speed turns out to be actually it's 4.7. But whatever. Obviously, your internet connection can also play a role. Most UK guys have a 30 ping. Most German guys have about a 20 ping. Like that's kind of just the general rule of what you do, what's happening in Europe. Honestly, that's not really that big of a point. It turns into a bigger point when you play fucking dudes from the Middle East, dudes from America, and it starts to get a fucking bit messy. But there's not really that much you can do to avoid that kind of stuff, honestly. So it's a bit of a moot point. But obviously, if you've got a fucking like potato microwave internet connection, then that's obviously going to play a part as well. My point in saying all these things is that they definitely feed into one another. When you've got a PS4 Pro instead of one of PS4, you've got MnK instead of any controller. When you've got a good monitor instead of like your flat screen leather couch and a big fat dog which kills babies like going on TV, and you've got good headphones, and you've got good internet, and okay, also, and you're a good player. That's not, I mean, I guess that's hardware, like a person. It really starts to accumulate, and it really starts to make a difference, and that is something which all these things make it less and less fair. At the end of the day, again, I feel so naive for saying these things as if they're a surprise, or as if no one realized this before. I'm not touching new ground here by saying that I wish there was a situation where, if not everyone used the same stuff, at least you were made aware in some way of what was going on. Even if it was just one of these things, like you could just have like basic information about what is going on at any one time. Really small things like what is the input, what is going on, are they using a controller, are they using a Zim, like even that would be just like, oh, okay, just so I know, there's just the transparency of going on. So if I'm a pub guy and I get fucking beamed by this guy, Tribe Jimmy, and it says he's got a Scuf, I'll be like, well, he's got a Scuf. You know, that jump shot makes more sense now. That fucking like jump around the corners, Lewis gun dip shot thing I do makes more sense now. Something like that. This is kind of like a really shit suggestion, I guess, because it's probably very hard to get past firewall software, all that kind of stuff, and then obviously you've got the masking reaction that would happen by by these companies afterwards. But I hope you get my point here when I try and say it would be nice that if it's impossible to say we need, or it would be nice to have a situation where there would be some sort of fair parity in Battlefield or any fucking console game, that is, then it would be nice at least if that can't be achieved to be able to know what's going on behind the scenes. I hope I've made my situation clear. If anyone was ever wondering, I've had a few people ask what stuff I use, but I hope I've been clear about that. I'm going to try and link a lot, not link, but sort of just like make it very clear in the comments, not the comment section, the description. Hopefully that was a decent first episode. It was probably a lot of rambling and a lot of bullshit. It is 4:30 in the morning, to be fair, so my voice is getting a bit shit. So if you ever wondered what the fuck was going on at any point, hopefully it makes sense now. Hope you enjoyed listening. That's my take on is hardware cheating. I didn't even answer the question. Is hardware cheating? Probably not in most cases, but it is in very obvious other cases. It's actually kind of a really obvious question. It's like you're not really cheating if you buy yourself a nice new monitor. You are if you get a fucking anti-recoil mod and MnK. Hope that's very clear. Hope that's crystal clear to anyone who's wondering if they should buy their Zim on the next Christmas. Don't do that. And if you do, go on PSE. Cool. Hope that's clear. And yeah, hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully I'll see everyone in the next episode. If you give this a like, I'll make sure I do some more. If this gets horrible reception, then I'll just stop, which is fair. But please don't dislike if it called your team out. Just gonna try and spit straight facts. That's what we're all about here, folks. Also, feel free to leave your opinions in the description. Obviously, this is a discussion, so if you have anything to add or anything that you think I've got wrong, feel free to let me know, and we can have a discussion about it in the comments. I check them all the time. So yeah, if you have an opinion, feel free to leave it, and we can have a discussion about it. Hope you had a good time. See everyone next time. Sayonara.